We all have our life story, the story we created in childhood about childhood. I'll be back in a moment to share with you the importance of rewriting that story if you want to live the life that you were born to live. We all have a life story that we tell ourselves. But did you know that the life story you created in childhood is not only an illusion created by your ego, it has the power to control your life? Before you emotionally reject what I'm saying, let me explain what I mean. Your life story from childhood is not who you are. It's ancient history. It's a story created by your childhood primitive ego about your childhood. It's not a current reality. In fact, if you can learn to change your childhood life story, it could change the way you live your life. When my therapist shared that insight with me early in my own therapy many years ago, my first reaction was, yeah, right. He obviously didn't experience my childhood. The pain of my childhood was still very real for me at that time. My life story was filled with sadness. I could remember, for example, very clearly as a 7-year-old standing on the street in front of my home one evening, wondering what it would be like if I lived in one of the other homes on my street. Fortunately, my therapist was patient with me as I struggled to embrace the simple message he was holding up for me to look at. He insisted that if I could identify the 2 or 3 primary themes embedded in my childhood life story, and then recognize that I did not have to live or be that story, it would change my life. It took time, but I was eventually able to identify 3 primary themes that seemed to be consistently running through my childhood life story. The first theme was invisibility. The second was being held responsible for everything bad that happened in my family. That's called being the lightning rod in your family. And the third theme was my need to be in control of my life. As these 3 themes became more clear to me, I began to see how I had learned to make myself invisible as a way to reduce the hurt I felt when my childhood world made me invisible. I came to see how blame in my childhood life story had not only convinced me that intimacy was dangerous, I could actually see how the fear of intimacy was now responsible for creating much of the pain I was experiencing in my adult life. I could see that I had learned to disengage and emotionally isolate myself from those around me, so I could distance myself from the hurt I would feel when I was blamed for the pain that others in my family had been projecting on me. And finally, I understood my lack of trust and how I exhausted myself needing to be in control of everything in my world, in my life. The survival skills that I'd developed to cope with childhood were effective in childhood. But I was beginning to understand they were not working very well in my adult life. With my therapist's help, I learned to see those 3 primary themes from my life story as ancient history. I began to understand that I needed to awaken to the reality of the world that I was now living in. That my story needed to be rewritten. It needed to be embracing who I had actually become, not the person I was in childhood. I could not change the experiences of childhood. That's not possible for any of us. But I could choose how to reinterpret them. Over time, I came to see that those experiences were the sources of wisdom, and that was an amazing insight for me. I began to see that they were the life experiences that taught me the importance, for example, of dropping my self-imposed invisibility and learning to more openly claim my strengths, to live life with more authenticity. They were the experiences that taught me to see and empathize with others who also struggled with a fear of intimacy. Those who struggle to find the courage, for example, to be emotionally connected and risk the possibility of being hurt. They were the childhood experiences that taught me the importance of just letting things be as they are, to live life as a process and stop pushing the river. I'm very grateful for that therapist and his patience. It takes time to change the way we see the world, but awakening our consciousness to the childhood illusions and survival skills that are unconsciously embedded in our life story is a very important learning. When we begin to grow and awaken to our life story, we come to understand that every experience that life offered us in childhood is simply another opportunity to learn the lessons embedded in that experience. Today, the learnings from my 3 life story themes are the spiritual wisdoms that more than any other empower and energize my life and my life purpose, that of helping others to awaken from the illusions and survival skills of their childhood, helping people learn to embrace their life purpose, helping them to discover the reason they were born, and helping them to become the person that they were meant to become. Just as the experiences of childhood helped me become the person that I was meant to become.